Welcome to the Venly Expert Talks, where we aim to inspire Web3 builders with great stories from great minds. I'm your host, Alexandra Ahrens, and I'd like to remind you that you can always reach out to us on Twitter, Discord, or LinkedIn with ideas for the podcast and questions for our guests. Welcome to episode 39 of the Venly Expert Talks. Today I'm joined by Mango Dogwood, creative director at Charged Particles, and we will be discussing NFT utility, how it is more than just a JPEG. So welcome, Mango. Thanks for joining me today.
Pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me.
Great. Yeah, of course. Let's dive right in. I'd like to talk first about your background and kind of what led you to your position today and your interest in crypto and all of it.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, excited to dive in. So yeah, I guess a little bit of background. I guess you've caught me at an interesting time in that right around this week or last week or next week would be 2 years really working in crypto in the NFT space. So kind of a nice anniversary. I guess I would have bought my first Bitcoin back in like 2013 or something, but like many of us, there were ins and outs, and but back again for about 2 years now. So yeah, I got into the NFT space as an artist originally, and then found myself excited to help contribute and build. And some of my background in community management and organizing art communities internationally kind of got me linked up with Ben Lakoff, one of the founders of Charged Particles, before that went live. And then I've just been helping to build the DeFi and NFT sort of technology side of things since then, among lots of other sort of passion projects and that sort of thing.
Very cool. Very cool. 2013 though, huh? That's pretty good.
Yeah. It's one of those like Bitcoin was $11 and I bought 10 of them kind of thing. And, it's like you try not to imagine what might have been in those sort of situations, don't you? But, c'est la vie, we're back again.
Yeah, that sounds about right. Yep. Heard this story many times for sure.
Yeah.
Cool. Great. Then could you introduce us to Charged Particles for anyone who's unaware?
Of course, yeah. So Charged Particles is a DeFi and NFT protocol that's live on both Ethereum and on Polygon that's looking to expand the functionality of NFTs and to help bring the worlds of DeFi and NFTs together. And what we do is we make it possible for an NFT to become a container that can then hold other assets inside of it. So you can start to put NFTs inside of NFTs, or interest-bearing Aave assets inside NFTs, or governance tokens or LP tokens or social tokens, or anything that you might hold in your wallet can now be stored inside an NFT now as this containerized object. And you can think of us as sort of a composability tool, which opens up a ton of new use cases in a bunch of different industries. So as a protocol and a technology layer, we see ourselves as like a building block that then other companies can integrate as a tool in their projects, and helping to get a bunch of different sorts of businesses started using this technology.
Definitely. Very cool. I assume there's quite a lot of building and technical sort of things going on with that. Is there anything you can tell us how that works at all?
Yeah, well, for sure. I'm not, I should say I'm not a developer. I'm just, I'm sort of, I come from the artistic side of things, and so I think that's maybe one of the more valuable parts of this NFT wave, is that it's brought in a bunch of creative people who can maybe explain in more layman's terms how some of these complex development architectures work. But I guess on a level of solidity, basically we're just assigning an NFT its own smart wallet, so that that smart wallet can hold its tokens, and it can check to see who the owner of the NFT is, and then that owner can then kind of operate that wallet on behalf of the NFT, which lets you kind of weave together different layers of value in pretty novel ways.
Very interesting. All right. Cool. Let's kind of dive into the topic a little bit more. So what, in your opinion, does NFT utility look like currently? And we'll dive into future aspects maybe in a second.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I think utility is a word that everyone is using, but not everyone is actually delivering. It's a sort of a, it's something that everyone recognizes we need more of. As some NFT projects kind of, talk about future utility in a way to excite communities and, using NFTs as sort of a crowdfunding mechanism for games and other sorts of access and this sort of thing, but I think utility really has a much more broad implication, not only like what does the NFT have as utility itself, but the idea of utilizing NFTs as a tool within a business or an architecture. So that NFT utility could mean, access, ownership, proof of ownership, sort of a membership loyalty kind of idea, but it can also mean using NFTs in novel ways to build new businesses. So I think there's a lot to sort of dive into there. But at the moment, I think when people think NFT utility, it tends to only mean sort of access to a private members club or the access to buy merch, which is not really utility. So I'm excited to see that sort of part of the NFT space continue to develop. As we really start to develop maybe actual utility for some of these things.
Yeah, that makes sense. Are there any use cases of anything happening currently that you're really interested that you want to point to specifically?
Sure. I think access and membership and all that stuff is great. I think that's there's a lot of opportunity for brands to be kind of using NFTs within rewards programs that they've already built out. But I think there's a lot more, interesting stuff within the world of, say, like refi, that is regenerative finance, and, using NFTs as a tool for developing new sort of sustainability models, regenerative sustainability models. There's a project being built on top of the Charged Particles protocol right now that I find pretty interesting, called Grandmother Grove, which is an attempt to use NFTs and DeFi to plant trees at scale. So in this sense, where we've got an NFT, right, that's a container that can hold assets inside of it. So when someone makes a donation to this project to plant trees around the world, half of that donation goes immediately to planting trees right away, to do good immediately, and the other half goes inside this NFT and it starts earning interest, right? And that interest is continuing to plant trees, perpetually planting trees as like sort of an engine over time. So, using the tools of NFTs and DeFi, utilizing these tools to continue planting trees around the world as just sort of one example from the refi angle. There's another really awesome project being built on Charged Particles, actually, that I would love to recommend for you to speak with at some point, called Unchained Music. So they're using NFTs as an accounting structure, on the back end. So we're thinking not of NFTs as something that you sell to people to try to raise money, but NFTs as a tool on the back end of the project to account for a bunch of different users. So Unchained Music is approaching the music distribution market. So if a musician wants to get their music on Spotify or TikTok, YouTube Music, iTunes, Tidal for the DJs, all of these streaming services, which you have to do to be a musician in the modern world, you need to get your music distributed to those platforms through a provider or some sort of a middle service, such as DistroKid or TuneCore. These are the sort of the projects that will do that distribution for you. And they'll either charge you like a subscription fee or a per album fee or a percentage of your royalties or some combination of all of those. And what Unchained Music does is that when you sign up as a member, they'll make you an NFT that represents you as a musician, that you don't actually even need to own it, right? That's just where we've got an NFT that represents you. So we're using NFTs as accounting here, and that they'll distribute your music for free to all of these providers. They'll eat that cost up front. And when all of your royalties come back, they get stored inside that NFT. That's you as an object, a digital object. It starts earning interest inside. and they'll take the interest off the top as revenue and return all of your royalties back to you. So it's maybe a little sort of a slightly complicated sort of thing to understand right away, but in this instance, a musician can get their music distributed for free and keep all of their royalties, with NFTs being utilized as the accounting mechanism on the back end. So when we're talking about NFT utility, it's like it goes so much deeper than like, oh, you get to buy a sweatshirt, or whatever. Sort of some of the stuff that's maybe most exciting to me at the present moment. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's really cool. I'll definitely have to talk with him. I have a lot of questions already about that and how that works.
Yeah.
Yeah, cool. In your opinion, is it something where moving forward, we're going to need to see more utility built into NFTs if we want to keep the NFT alive?
I would say no as my immediate answer. But I would say that within the context of these, 10,000 edition generative animal art profile pictures, that if that little slice of what NFTs are wants to continue to develop, that they will need to continue adding new utility for them to be, to stay competitive within that slice of the market. So in that sense, yes, that these multi-edition, crowdfunding, sort of animal picture thing, that slice of the market definitely will need to adopt new utility, provide more interesting game mechanics and access and start to get clever with it. But the NFT market is so much more than just that slice. I think we've come to think of it as just these profile pictures. But in the example of say like art collecting, art doesn't need utility. The reason you buy art is because it's inspired you or because you'd like to support that artist. It doesn't need to have like a 10 layer sort of hyper gamified sort of thing. It's, you're buying it because it's art, and within other contexts, the answer will change. So in general, I don't think NFTs need to have utility, but I think we will see more and more use cases of NFTs. And in that sense, the tool that the NFT is will become more useful and will have more utility itself.
Mm-hmm. So could you point to some industries or projects or brand types that would benefit more from a utility-based NFT?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I think, music I've spoken about. And I think what's really interesting with Unchained Music and what I think it represents is, and it is very in line with the broader mission of Web3, which is to lower the barriers to entry, making this music distribution free, and to remove middlemen from industry. So there are many industries that could benefit from thinking about NFTs with this sort of framework. I think, fashion comes to mind as probably an industry that could be more equitable, that could benefit from, contributors getting more royalties than they already do. I think there are probably, any sort of brand with a loyalty program or some sort of, affiliate sort of, membership, such and such, all of these, are ways for brands to utilize NFTs without just simply grabbing a bunch of money from their consumer base, but using this tool to make their process more equitable for everyone participating. In my mind, if I go to 7-Eleven to buy a Slurpee, I should get a little 7-Eleven token, that, every time I go there, I should get a little bit more, stake in 7-Eleven. And it's like, well, I go to 7-Eleven every single day. I don't, let me clarify. But if I'm at 7-Eleven every single day, then I should have more and more a say in the next Slurpee flavor. I should get like a growing, say in the process of 7-Eleven and maybe ownership of it and that kind of thing. I think NFTs could be used for that kind of model. I think like ticketing is a pretty obvious one, where, you could simultaneously make the ticket and a valuable art object, like, oh, I was at this Super Bowl when this happened, proof of it, and simultaneously like reduce scalping. So it's like there's a lot of win-win models for lots of industries, but I would say anything immediately adjacent to art, film, fashion, music, gaming, all of these things. I think there's a lot of opportunity.
Okay. Do you see, so it comes up a lot as like a distant dream, but how do you see it working with some more like legally based, or for example, with real estate and that kind of utility? Do you see that as being a really positive thing that we can look forward to, or maybe not?
Yeah, I mean, I find myself situated firmly on team utopian vision of Web3.
Okay.
I think I'm definitely always optimistic. Obviously, as with any technology, it can and likely will be, there will be an attempt to co-opt it and use it in the wrong way. We've actually seen a lot of that, with major brands coming in and just like scooping a big chunk of cash and vanishing. I think that it's likely we'll continue to see that sort of thing, unless we reiterate the importance of the sort of cultural ideals of Web3. But on a conceptual level, I think there's lots of benefit, for legal protections, real estate, all this sort of stuff. At the moment, in order to sign a contract, I just squiggle my name on a slice of paper, and that's the legally binding thing, is just this squiggle, which, made sense, a couple hundred years ago, but we have this much more robust tool, to that it lives in a consensus mechanism in the blockchain, where it's maybe much harder to, it could be much harder to forge or be fraudulent within a lot of these legal contexts. And so that way, I think, it can be a very positive thing within all of those realms. And I think it's just a more robust version of a contract, where the metadata is something that is very easy to find and point to and prove, in a way that maybe certain contractual agreements are not so robust currently.
Okay, fair enough. What would you say are some of the main benefits you would point to for brands to get into having utility-based NFTs? So why would they be interested?
So I think there's an opportunity here where this technology is inevitable. It's happening, and it's a sort of there's the sort of the old paradigm of like the people wanting not to be the first movers, because there's higher risk and all that sort of thing. But I think there's a huge opportunity with a technology like this that's going to stick around, where you can really define your business as one that is aligned with the goals of Web3, and use that as an opportunity to not only reap the benefits of this technology, but also to signal to your users, your consumer base, customers, any of this, that you're utilizing this technology, to move us all forward together. Here's this thing that we can all be, there can be a win-win situation for both the business and for the consumers involved, and that, adopting early with the right sort of attitude and vision of it could be like hugely beneficial. But within all of the industries and sort of contexts I mentioned before. But I think for people that are in Web3 already, it's pretty immediately clear what a company's intentions are when they're getting involved. And I think it's also important on our side to help educate those companies and about how to do it the right way, and not just to do it because there's this opportunity to sort of, again, squeeze money out of a situation, but rather to be a part of the innovation.
Okay. So on the flip side of that, are there any points or reasons you would see immediately why a brand or anything shouldn't get into this at this point in time?
I think sometimes, maybe businesses like are so desperate to try to like get involved in that they might make something that is overly complicated, or, they're trying to, they're trying not to miss a window of opportunity. And in doing so, they build something that's actually way more like full of friction and, more complex. And it actually, pushes people away, rather than bringing people in. I don't have any particular examples. I probably wouldn't name them if I did, but
sure.
I would say just for any brands that are trying to get involved, that, that education is a key part of it, and, making sure that they really understand the implications of what they're building, rather than just sort of just going for it in fear of missing a hype cycle or something, but to really like consider how this architecture could be built into their existing systems, and benefit everybody involved.
Okay. Are there any other tips along those lines that you would give to anyone thinking about creating an NFT with utility?
Yeah, I mean, I would say like, spend some time connecting with the folks that have been involved in building for a long time prior to just releasing something just to release something. I think it's a new technology, and, just because something is an NFT doesn't make it more valuable inherently, but you can use NFTs to make something much more valuable. And so that process might be a little complicated. So I would encourage, brands that are looking to get involved, to connect with folks that have been here for a while building, and, to explore, where are we right now actually, and where are we going in 5 years? And let's shoot for the, being a part of, the next sort of wave of innovation. I think education is probably the biggest point.
Okay. So got to play the devil's advocate here a little bit, but are there any downsides that you can foresee at this point, for brands or for users when it comes to focusing on utility?
Within the context of utility specifically, I mean, not necessarily. I think, as a modern digital citizen, we're all sort of aware of the grand scale with which our data is being collected, and to have an immutable record of all of that data, is probably where some of the folks who are nervously situated in the dystopian half of the vision are worried about, right? And so I would say that, it all circles back to education again, in that, people who don't understand NFTs are much more likely targets for things, scams, data collection, and other sorts of, as of yet unbuilt, modalities of control, or exploitation, I suppose. So again, just education is the biggest thing. It's the double-edged sword of like, self-reliance and self-sovereignty, is that you have to be responsible for your own finances, and not everyone knows how to do that. And it's pretty easy to see for someone who's trying to be malicious, who those people are and how to take advantage of them. So there's an element of all of that to consider. And I think that's something that is a responsibility of the community at large, to look out for each other, to help build systems that are inherently more robust and safe for everybody. But I think that's sort of a technological inevitability as well, is that decentralization will, ideally lead to more protections for people over time. And that the co-opting of this technology that I mentioned earlier is where those dangers will come from. And so, I think, that would be another thing I would say to brands, is that like in co-opting this for the wrong reasons, you are contributing to the negative, more dangerous components of the possibility of this technology.
Yeah, that makes sense. For sure. I mean, that definitely leads to not specifically NFT utility, but really the whole space, right?
Sure.
But no specific things you can think of for adding utility. It's rose-colored glasses for you. It's all going to be great. It can only improve.
I haven't spent a lot of time thinking about like how could I use this tool maliciously, so I don't have. Yeah, I think it's a broader thing, I guess like the ones like this, and this is what exists already, is that, often people say, oh, this NFT has utility when in fact it doesn't really. I mean, that's a downside for me. That's an existing downside is just the word utility as a buzzword, that like, oh, buying this NFT gives you access to buy this NFT, which gives you access to buy this NFT, which gives you access to buy sort of that whole thing, that's maybe, and that exists already. So, I don't think people focusing on new utility will necessarily lead to too many negative situations. It's just the framing of non-utility as utility.
Sure.
Something.
Yeah, no, that's great. I appreciate that.
Something like this.
Yeah. So when we're talking about utilities, especially in the future, is it something where you think it's important to focus on kind of the digital aspect of utility, as we were kind of talking about, like with music and art for sure? Or is it something where we are also going to be thinking about like physical objects coming into play? How do you see that?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's an interesting dynamic there. I think, there's lots of fascinating stuff to be done with like, augmented reality, virtual reality, mixed reality experiences, all of that stuff. Linking the physical and the digital is I think super fascinating. And I think often, this is like maybe an instance, that I mentioned before where people are, trying to make a solution for a problem that doesn't exist sometimes, where it's like, someone might think, oh, this NFT doesn't actually have value, so let me include this physical thing, which I know has value, to make the whole thing valuable. I think that's like for some people that like helps bridge the value gap between this thing. But I don't think it's necessary when you start to think about like, okay, I could buy a physical product, and it doesn't have to have an NFT component. It could, and it could be like, oh, scan my T-shirt, and it has this whole, AR display with beautiful art going around it, and it plays a song when you scan it with your phone, and that I have proof of ownership, which gives me all sorts of. You can do all that stuff, which is great. But you could also say like a fashion brand could sell some amount of clothing that's not at all linked to an NFT, but as a customer on the digital side of the equation, I have NFTs, within the digital part of the experience that measure how many pieces of clothing I've bought, how long I've been a customer, what events that I've been to that this company has put on, and like a ledger of who I am, as like, all of that data, can be gamified in an interesting way. But the actual clothing and the digital experience don't have to be so like trying to put these two like square peg in a round hole kind of thing necessarily. But I think it can become another component of the whole experience, as a user or consumer, that kind of thing.
Okay. This is maybe the second or third time I've heard you bring up kind of like a loyalty program for customers kind of idea. Is that something that you're looking forward to?
Not necessarily, but I think it's, well, sure. I'm not personally. How many coffee shops have you been to where you've got this hole punch card and you get 9 out of the 10 of them and you lose the card,
Sure. Yeah.
That applies to so many different contexts. But I think if we think about like gaming is a huge market, as a part of the digital experience. The loyalty program at the coffee shop is almost exactly the same as like completing the quest, and like earning experience points and like, growing as a human, your certifications from your university, all of these things that make you sort of qualified and prove your experiences and like have an archive of the things you've done and accomplished and the art you've collected along the way. It all fills out this sort of digital identity, that interfaces with the businesses that you kind of operate with. And I think a lot of businesses already have loyalty programs, so it makes sense that there would be some sort of overlap there. But for me, it's actually really about like gamifying the whole sort of experience. In that, like, within the context of gaming, we've gone from, like pay to win, where you have to buy more tokens for your cell phone game, into like a play to earn, where you can earn money by playing, where, certain people in like Southeast Asia are earning a greater living by playing video games than they could at any of the physical jobs they're doing, into a more of a like a paid to participate, where like my whole sort of life is like a game that I play, because like, AI and automation have made it such that there are no jobs for us to do anymore. We can kind of just sit back. And the way that I earn value and create value is to participate in different things. I own, 5% of 7-Eleven, and I've been to these 20 art exhibits, and I've helped in the growth of these businesses. And all of that is just gamified value, that is valuable. It's not just some ethereal point, but it's a store of value in the form of tokens and NFTs and that sort of thing. And, I think that could be a direction that we could see this going.
Yeah, sure. So you mentioned that you are firmly in the utopia camp. So I have to ask this question. If you could think, and I really want you to let your brain go wild here, what is something you could see in the future for NFT utility that you're like, that would be so cool, I want that?
Sure. Yeah. One of the ideas we've been talking about at Charged Particles for ages that would be, I think, super fun. Everyone remembers when there was that brief sort of Pokemon Go stint, where everyone was
that was crazy.
I want to walk. My favorite part of that, as a little aside, was that like all the, in New York City, all of the dog walk, the dog, stores, the doggy daycares and the various places were like, oh, you're going to play Pokemon Go, take some dogs for a walk. And then people are just like walking dogs that aren't theirs looking for Pokemon. It's like, this is great.
This is perfect.
And so one of the ideas we've had about like, augmented reality geocaching. So just as a concept, you could have 1,000 people or 1 million people or however many, all put in some money, right, to play this game. You put in like $100 or something, and it all goes into this pot, that's controlled by a DAO. It's no one is collecting that, right? But it sits in an NFT, and that NFT is then hidden somewhere in the world, in the city or out in the forest or something. It's like a geocaching experience, not unlike Pokemon Go. You're like, you're looking for this hidden piece of art somewhere, and the first person to find it gets to collect the interest that's been earning inside of it. So you get 1 million people to put $100 in. That's $100 million, right? That's earning, say, even like 2% interest, over time. The longer it takes to find it, the more interest it gets. And people get more and more motivated to go find it, and they get to keep the interest. But no one loses their money. No one loses that investment. You can leave the game at any time, but this is grand treasure hunt, in the style of Pokemon Go.
Very cool, very utopian, but very cool. I like it.
Do you know 1 million people?
I'll get on that for you. I'll let you know.
Yeah. Send them a Telegram or something. Yeah.
Yeah, right. The biggest Telegram group. Yeah. Perfect. I mean, very, very interesting stuff here. Is there anything that I haven't asked that you're like, I really want to say this thing about NFT utility?
I think you got it. I think you nailed a lot of it. I guess I would re-encourage you to chat with Unchained Music, because that's my my favorite project right now for sure.
Definitely. Yeah. Okay, cool. Is there anything you want to plug?
I do have a funny little personal project, I guess.
Sure. Yeah.
We released everyone is talking about blue chip investments and the right. So what is the blue chip NFT of the time? Everyone looking for that sort of edge. So we released a project called the Blue Chips, which is a handful of hand-drawn blue corn tortilla chips.
I was hoping.
Buy the dip, right? And so we're about to launch our guac, salsa, and queso tokens, which you can scoop every week and use to buy new, unique art. So you can go to weloveguac.org and learn more about the Blue Chips. Shameless plug.
No, that's awesome. That is creative. I love it. Very cool. I normally ask who we should have on Vet Next, but you've already given me that. So I'm looking forward to talking to them. Like I said, I already have questions about that. So that'll be really fun. But thank you so much for your time. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah. Thanks for having me. Lots of great questions. And I appreciate you trying to get me to, find what's wrong with it. It's always good to be focused on that. So it doesn't happen. Right.
Yeah. Like I said, don't want to give people ideas, but it's nice to think about both sides. Cool.
Sure.
Yeah. So thanks again. And let's talk soon.
Thanks very much.
If you like today's episode, please rate, follow, or subscribe on whatever platform you're listening on. And if you really like our content, join our Discord community, where there's always good conversation, exciting news, and live AMAs. Thanks for listening.